think we will open, and if anyone is just joining us, you are welcome. So, thank you for joining Get Savvy's webinar today. As you see on screen, this is about a 2025 research study on AI tech trends and the future of member education. Really exciting point in time for us to share the findings and the recommendations from this recent study, which you will get a copy of after the webinar, and we'll go into lots of detail about what's included there. So as you see on screen as well, my name's Matt Dunphy. I'm a lead consultant in learning and development at Get Savvy. And before we get into proceedings, I'd like to introduce my colleague to say a few words. Alan Reid, do you want to come in?
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be part of the launch of the research study today. I think there are some fantastically interesting findings for anyone who's putting together or responsible for an L&D program, or particularly for anyone who's thinking of an L&D or LMS project over the next 18 months. There's certainly a lot of must-know things about how the market has changed in the last couple of years. So delighted to be part of it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alan. So yeah, we will get down to things right away. So if we just move on, what I want to talk about first is a couple of features of the webinar today, and a couple of highlights for you up front. So we are recording this session, and that is purely so that you get a copy of it and you can absorb it in more detail afterwards at your leisure. And so please don't worry about, scribbling down notes furiously. You will get the content via the recording. I've already mentioned, of course, you'll also get the research study itself. I have also said, and I will keep saying, please do share your questions on chat. I mean, it is the way to interact with us. We'll track them as we go through. And then we have a section at the end where we'll cover as many as we can before we finish. And just to say, as well as the research study, a lot of the content we create for our webinar series are actually from our own experiences of developing an LMS platform and course content, and particularly as you see there, the course managing technology change projects for business people. So as part of this webinar, as a delegate, you get a 50% discount on that course. Really vital if you're planning or you're actually in the middle of a technology project right now. So I encourage you to avail of that. And I'll pass over to Alan, who'll tell you a little bit more about who Get Savvy are.
Just a few words about us. So we provide LMS advice and guidance for membership bodies in particular. We've been in this market for literally decades. So we have developed low-cost models for helping organizations get from either a from-scratch starting point to a completed L&D and LMS platform, or for helping people along the way. We're 100% platform independent, so we work across all sorts of different platforms. Sometimes we help with salvaging something that isn't working quite as well as it should, and other times we implement an entire platform. There are three main things that we're keeping it really brief. For us, it's about walking the walk as well as talking the talk. So as well as our research and our educational activities, we also provide low-cost, member-focused LMS solutions. So we can actually construct and deliver and integrate an LMS for your organization. The big things with there is incredibly transparent on the pricing. There's no annual recurring license fees and so on. And everything tends to be fixed price after a brief conversation. We do an awful lot of content digitization. We have an India-based team who have won awards on taking membership insights and content and learning and turning that into exciting, engaging, interactive content. Tends to cost about a third of what people expect it to be from previous years, partly because we use AI-based tools now to keep the costs even lower, and partly because we're just very used to delivering that kind of content. And then there's the independent L&D consultancy services. Quite often we're asked to help people work out what should we do next, how much should we spend, what's the best use of our money, how do we make use of the current technology that we have, what do we keep, what do we replace. So we're very used to doing short and focused projects to give advice on all of that. And then just to mention, we do work across any LMS. We're platform independent. So our advice is all about you, the client, and what you need, rather than being on a bung for this or that supplier or particularly interested in any particular technology. Okay, Matt, if I can just hand on to you to get us through the content, please.
Yes, thank you, Alan. So, of course, today it's all about the research study. So, in a moment, I'll talk about some of the key trends we're seeing in the educational landscape right now. So, that's across UK professional membership bodies. Like any good study, we've got some key findings to share with you today and recommendations. And we'll certainly run through all of our findings. We might linger on two to three just for emphasis, but again, you'll be able to read the full study later. And we have a specific section on AI. AI answers the conversation as it has been doing in the last 18 to 24 months in the sector. Again, I'll summarize there today, but you'll be able to read the full section in the study when you get it. And then just before we get to your questions, we'll have a light demo of our own LMS and some of the technology we've created around our courses. So, if we get down to things straight away, then just an introduction on our approach with this study. You don't need to read the text on screen. I'll summarize. Essentially, we wanted to talk to UK professional membership bodies around their experiences of digital education and also their early adoption of AI technology. As you see on screen, we spoke to over 100 learning and development leaders in the sector. So a really good, credible study and many, many perspectives. And we had a mixed methods approach. So we were looking at both interviews with these participants as well as survey data. So you'll see that throughout the study itself. So, if we talk trends, then, and again, as these come up, please feel free to add any of your questions into the chat, and we'll cover them later. But I like to view this as the overall landscape, kind of the ecosystem of digital education right now in the sector, and some of the key things people and organisations are experiencing. So, if we dive straight in there, and there are six of these. And I'll run through each one briefly. So the first one is around LMS provision. So as you see on screen, just over half of the people we spoke to actually don't think their LMS is working well enough for them at the moment. They're not getting the most out of it. And actually, of the remainder, only 13% are saying, yeah, we're good at the minute. Our LMS is working fine for us. So, what's the takeaway there? There is a need for change. There is a level of dissatisfaction in organizations about what they've currently got in this space. So if we move on to the next one, then again, for over half of the research study group, we see this joint challenge of both issues with their content and whether that's not having enough to provision for members or actually struggling to digitize, or indeed then the other challenge being just the technology that supports learning for members. As you see there, 28% of people said they were fine, with their content, that they actually liked what they delivered. It was the technology around that they viewed as poor. So some people have got both challenges. Some people are really focused on content right now. Third one, in terms of key trends, is a positive. Nearly 90% of the research study group said they found that digital education and what they're offering is driving member engagement. So, if you're talking to your leaders or you are a leader in this webinar today, it's about underlining that this stuff is a catalyst for more interaction with your members and more satisfaction. We'll move on from there then. Just there are three further key trends at the moment. And the next one you see there is around the appetite for hybrid or blended learning. So almost 80% of the organizations we spoke to have this appetite for more hybrid learning solutions. I think what we'd say is it's not to replace the in-person interactions. We know they're very valuable. It's about to get smarter and to be able to advance in terms of what they offer digitally. A couple of AI insights then. So the first one being really critical one, and we'll go into this in more detail throughout the webinar today. Around about 80% of organizations said they were certainly discussing AI, and how to adopt it. It's a much lower percentage, around about 20% were actually experimenting and using AI tools when we interviewed people. And then kind of complementing that, the last key trend here is 90% of the people and organizations we spoke to agreed that, a formal AI policy is required. And this is at the time of the study. None of the organizations we spoke to had actually managed to get a policy in place. So again, the key takeaway there is there's still this burning platform around AI policy and getting people using AI safely within organizations. So that's the key trends. That sort of sets the scene on. You'll see a number of those kind of echoed in the findings and in the AI section. So if we actually dive into these, as I say, what I'll do is I'll work through each one briefly, and there's a few of these we want to open out and discuss, Alan and I, today. So the first one really is about this key point that actually there is a high demand for digital education in the sector, and you see kind of 100% of the organizations we spoke to, everybody is keen on this and exploring this. And the key thing I'll say, you're probably recognizing this yourselves, is digital education or that offering tends to suit digitally native members, so those younger generations, and also both nationally and internationally, if you have that remit, a digital offering and hybrid learning is allowing you to expand the scope of what you offer and your audience for learning. So that's certainly on trend at the moment, and one of the key things we found. If we move on to key finding two, again, I would say this is broader about people's core services. There is a lower than desired digital maturity still across the organizations we spoke to. You'll see the pie chart on the right there. Either people felt they were at a basic level of maturity or they were developing. Very few thought they'd actually gotten to where they want here. And really, for me, this is basically a lot of people are still working on their core systems and modernizing there. And the question for us is, where does LMS and learning fit into that bigger picture in terms of what you invest in? I think, Alan, you've got a point around this.
Sure. I think an interesting point with learning and development projects, LMS projects, is that they're often the poor relation when it comes to digital transformation budgets. So membership organizations, they know they have to spend on the website. There's no choice about it. They know they have to spend on the CRM system that's going to be the repository from data from the websites. They know they have to spend on things like events management because bums on seats for events. But L&D projects are often seen as more of of an afterthought, and it becomes harder to then to justify the cost if you're the L&D manager trying to get modern spending and modern provision going. We often have to help organizations explain that actually what members value more than anything, we've got research to back this up, over 80% of them value most from their membership association the learning and development opportunities that's going to help them in their career, it's going to help them make more money, and that's why they remain a member. So it doesn't have to be this massive income stream of and by itself, but the fact is it's a huge supporter for membership, and that's where the justification for those projects should really come from. So really interesting in terms of where the money gets spent.
Brilliant, Alan. Thank you. And I think so. Just to underline this again, although core systems improvement is likely going on in all of our organizations, it's how we broker for the value of investing in the learning technology. Great. So if we move on to number three, then I would probably still say this is a common challenge in a number of areas of professional membership bodies. It's this lack of capacity. And to give you something new here today, I think there's two things going on. There is the lack of time or focus on a level of strategic thinking. How do we understand what we want to offer our members for their education? And then that then leads to actually securing the investment for the right roles. And as we all see, and it's still ongoing, that war for talent, that competition to get the right people in place and to keep them, so that they can drive your L&D strategy as part of your organization. Number four, then, certainly not to sound vanilla here, modernization is necessary but challenging. What we found in the study, and you'll see it on the chart on the right there, is actually I think organizations in the sector are still very committed to the mandate of modernization. They know they need to do this. They know that it supports what members need. It's just kind of continuing to commit to that despite many challenges, both technological and cultural. So there's certainly a focus on modernization across the organizations we spoke to. Finding number five then is AI specific, and I'll echo what I said earlier around trends. You see there on screen, a lot of organizations are saying they're discussing AI and what they need to do. It's around about that 20% who are actually doing something and exploring AI tools. Now, that might have gone up slightly since we took this study, but I think the point remains, how do we move from discussion to action? And I think some of that is about safety, how we can safely experiment with a pilot or proof of concept using AI. Number six, then, in our findings, is kind of an expansion of the technological barriers or challenges that organizations are finding in these spaces of digital education and AI. And we always see it, there is still this struggle to actually replace and modernize legacy systems. And what I would say there is that's not only your legacy LMS, if you've got one, it is obviously sometimes your wider systems, which makes integration harder. And so it's how do we modernize, including LMS in the conversation? And then, of course, we're all very conscious of cybersecurity now. So in the learning space, how do we keep people's data safe and secure alongside the rest of the development we need to do? Findings number 7 and 8, I'll kind of take together and I'll bring Alan in. We are finding, I think, because there is so much to learn in this space, excuse the pun, that there is a lack of awareness of potential suppliers of LMS and other related technologies. So, there is a lot of need for education about how people do their research. And I'm sure all of the importance of getting that decision right of which supplier you choose for what should be a long-term valuable relationship. Alan, do you want to talk a little bit about the supplier network for learning at the moment?
Absolutely. And it is one of the most common questions we get. We had somebody recently refer to us as the Which magazine of the L&D marketplace. We run something like 12 or so vendor selections a year, helping people choose the right technology partners. And so, no matter how stupid we are, you're going to learn what they're good at, what they're bad at, and so on. I think there is a lack of awareness, and part of the problem is a little bit of an indictment of the supplier marketplace here, where the supplier marketplace isn't serving the membership world as well as it should. That doesn't help with your previous point, Matt, as well, with the technical barriers of how to get it working with the rest of your systems. The fact is, 90% of LMS projects that are done by LMS suppliers are not done for membership bodies. Membership is a niche. They're mostly done for commercial organizations. Coca-Cola wants a course to help induct new employees, or they're done for educational organizations like universities. And those are the projects they're really used to. Membership organizations, we know inside out, the people on this webinar know inside out, are vastly different. So the degree of integration is vastly higher. Those other organizations don't need integration into CPD. They don't need, the degree of sophistication on a landing page and calls to action to promote courses to members. They also don't need all of the help in improving the value back to the member about your L&D offering and making it as easy as possible to find things. So there's no surprise really that membership organizations struggle to have an awareness of who can really help them in the marketplace, who's really specialized in membership in the marketplace, and where they're not taking a risk on going with someone who doesn't do their kind of project very often. So this definitely confirms my own anecdotal experience in running vendor selections and familiarity with the marketplace itself.
Great, Alan. Thank you. And I'll underline there once more, there are exciting conversations to have about how membership organizations are different and the scale of reach that they can achieve. But yeah, it is sometimes also about educating the suppliers about what we need in this space. Great. So finding number 8, I would view as related. Again, we'll put our hands in the air. We are a consultancy, but we did see in the study quite a significant interest and need for external support and consultancy advice. Again, I'd only say that digital education advances and the boom of AI technology in the last 2 years, there's a lot to learn there and there's a lot to actually exercise care around. So whether it's an educational strategist for your overall learning strategy, it's content experts, particularly around digitization and accelerating that pace of what you deliver, or it's technology suppliers or business consultants, there is a lot that can be provided to support you in the wider ecosystem of third parties right now. Alan, do you want to say a brief word on kind of the consultancy space around these themes?
Absolutely, and of course we're not unbiased. It's what we do. But what I would say is the main areas, if you're thinking of an L&D project, an LMS project, or you're struggling, perhaps you put something in and no buggers using it. It's not getting the take up that you require. There are some key areas where I think you can only really get the information from outside and not from suppliers. You need it from somebody who's focused on you and your needs. And that is things like what's the best use of our money? What's the best use of our money and resource to have this version of ourselves, this version of our L&D program? So getting a little help and guidance on that and answering that question can really help things and can really unblock the way forward for the organization. The second part of it, which is often part of the first process about money, is how best to justify your L&D project. Making the relationship between your LMS and L&D project and your overall organizational strategy, your overall revenue targets for membership, your overall growth and retention targets for membership, drawing those lines and making sure those lines are actually valid are one of the most important areas, I think, for getting some advice to get alignment and agreement within your L&D and then wider management teams, and then make it clear what the way forward is. After that, you might just choose, okay, we can go it alone. But those tend to be the things that people get stuck on for years at a time, all for want of a short piece of advice in those areas. So yes, I think those are things that are easy to justify. Okay.
That's great. I think remember, just strategy doesn't need to be capital S. It is really, as Alan
Yes.
says, about making the right choices. It doesn't need to be a 6-month exercise involving the entire organization. A strategy review. So the last two findings then, number 9 definitely emphasizes the point we found around hybrid learning. And I'll make a new kind of give you a new takeaway here. It's not replacing in-person connection and interaction and learning, because we know people really value that and they're returning to a real demand for that after the pandemic years. It is about two things. How do we have a good online provision, classroom and master classes or self-led learning, and how do we actually blend digital tools into what we do in person? So we actually have some support, digitally when we run something in person. For example, feedback, and how do we collect feedback live inside a classroom setting? So definitely
Great.
that appetite for hybrid learning as well. And then finding number 10, certainly last on this list, but not least by any means. And we mentioned this before, you won't see this stat on screen, but 93% of the people we spoke to viewed content digitization as their number one priority in the near future. So you see on the screen, maybe for reasons of time, budget, or again, expertise, there are challenges right now where people want to grow the amount of content they deliver. They want to smarten it up. They want to accelerate how quickly they can digitize and create content so that there's more variety for their members. And they want to be actually hosting and storing it somewhere that's attractive as well and well designed. So a real focus on content digitization in what we found. Okay, I think we're going to have a quick poll now, Alan. I think this is just going to be to get your view on the webinar about which of these findings might resonate most. So Alan's going to bring up the poll in a second, and we'll give you a wee bit of time just to put in your votes, and then we'll have a little look at the results together before we move on. So you'll see those questions on screen, and I'll read the question. Which of the research study findings below reflect your own position? So which of these are you seeing as kind of critical to address, which might be impinging on progress most right now? So I think, Alan, that poll is open, and we'll just
Yeah,
let's see.
we'll give people a little time to answer it. So essentially, if you look at the questions there, uh, from the research study, we're able to see these are the key areas of interest for people. What of them resonate with you? What are the what where you share the same position as the responses in there? So we'll just give that a few more seconds to go. And then I'll end the poll and publish the results. So let's share the results.
Great, fantastic.
So what we're seeing here is we're seeing a high demand for digitized education from members, relatively low there, which is out of sync with the majority of the research study findings. But then where we have a real channel, a real correlation, is people are reporting that they themselves have a low level of digital maturity in L&D. We're seeing a lot of that in the marketplace. And then a lack of internal capacity, where over half of the respondents here have that as a big issue. And then just to pick one other, and then Matt, I'll just invite you. AI awareness is growing. There's a lot of talk about AI, but real change is limited. There's not much actually happening on the ground. Is that your own experience as you're talking around projects as well?
Yeah, and I would say we have empathy, particularly on the capacity issue. There are so many things on the priority list for a membership organization, including on the technology list. As we said before, is where does learning get a viewing? I would emphasize that point about its value. It is one of the things members are most attracted by. So certainly being able to invest and to get some commitment to some roles there is crucial.
Yeah.
But I don't say that that's easy. And I think, yeah, we're seeing that echoing of what we find, which is, look, just the pivot point. And I do think it's about piloting or about a proof of concept between all this discussion at many levels about AI and getting into action, because that's going to reduce risk. You're going to have people safely experimenting versus just going out onto the internet and putting your corporate data or your intellectual property into a chat engine.
And just briefly, we've had a couple of really good questions come in on the Q&A.
Yeah.
So please do drop in your own questions in relation to your own project or concerns you might have about your own way forward, and we'll answer those as we go.
Fantastic. We'll crack on, but thank you for those questions. We'll definitely get to them towards the end of the hour. So recommendations then, and again, I would say view this as kind of overall, what might be the key focus areas to actually address some of the challenges you are facing right now. I'll run through these and I'll bring Alan in just for his view at the end. There are 5 of these. So the first one, and this is almost like a bedrock or a keystone for Get Savvy, and the business case for investment in this area is crucial. This is always a stakeholder buy-in piece. And I would actually say, I mean, you might be a leader on the call yourself, but with colleagues, it might also be an education. Why do we need to invest in this area? What is it going to drive for us? What's the difference we're actually going to see? What's going to shift the dial for the membership organization overall? And then, of course, there is the technicalities about just knowing the amount of investment you need to put into learning in order to get a hard return on investment. Some of these courses are generating income and can generate income more in the future. So how do we prove that business case and saying we will see a return here if we invest? So that's the first one. And the second one is related around building a digital learning roadmap. I'd probably say if you're from a technical audience on the call or you have a roadmap you've created, it might be broader. It might cover all of your technologies. And I think that's a sound idea. I think if that's the case, it's just about making sure the detail and the visibility of learning technologies is sufficient. And then, of course, you can create your own about, what are the bits of learning tech we've got? What are the touch points with our members or with other guest learners, and how do we actually develop over time to improve and to grow that offering? So a roadmap's really good as a tool for that. Again, I'm sure Alan will come in on this at the end, but we have talked about content digitization. Seeking the advice and understanding how you can do a number of things. How can you convert what you've got into digital format? How quickly can you do that? How can you actually get a pace and a rhythm of content design and delivery so there is more and more available on your LMS for members, particularly driving their qualifications where that's the case. And again, how do you get your platform beautifully designed so that the content sits there and people want to actually engage with it and absorb it and learn it? So that's the third recommendation. Number 4 then is a really critical one. I said up front in trends around no organizations having an AI policy in place. Again, I'd probably suggest having governance controls and an AI policy shouldn't be a year-long exercise, but getting that right and communicating that across all of your people is probably the exercise that needs to be done again, so that people are practicing safely and they're keeping all of the good data protection, GDPR, and other corporate governance factors in mind as they're conducting their jobs using AI more and more. And then number 5 then is building long-term capability. 2 things here. I view this as technical capability. So we go back to the systems and the applications that you're developing to make what you do stronger. And then, of course, the human capability. I'd say people are crying out for training, upskilling, more knowledge about how AI will fit into their roles in the future. And I think there's good news. I think human sort of skill sets like empathy, critical thinking, creative thinking won't go away. But of course, people do need these skills to actually survive and thrive in the future world of work. Alan, do you want to come in and sort of give your overview of our recommendations and how people might activate this?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So I guess I would say interpret these recommendations in a very human way. If you're the L&D director, you're responsible for a program of education. What the research shows is that you must not accept being the poor relation. The research shows that your membership, the thing that they value most about being a member is what you offer or what you should be offering in the L&D area. So recognize that you're a vital plank in the organization existing at all, and a vital plank in members renewing. And use that instinct, use that knowledge to then justify further investment, further development of your L&D offering, and tackle things like, well, we have a certain amount of member churn. Why are they leaving? Well, imagine you're Netflix and you only put one movie on every month. How would our subscription numbers do? There's a certain need for a volume and personalization and sophistication of content to keep members coming back, to keep them interested. So use the tools that we're talking about here about ROI and a business case and justifications, and explain why your area is important, and why it's a vital plank in keeping the organization thriving. And then use that to compete with your fellow offerings in the membership world and outside the membership world, so that you can grow and retain your membership with the benefits that you're providing. So at that kind of human level, I think that's the main takeaway we're seeing from the research.
Yes, and I think if you're out there, trying to get buy-in for investment or a project, think of faster, better, easier, and safer. If you can prove these points and that, making a change or actually developing further will make it faster, better, easier, and safer for us as an organization, people really start to listen. Good stuff.
Great.
Okay,
This is
let's have another poll. And
Really,
I
this is
think,
a really quick one here. This is about the recommendations, actually. So we're trying to walk the walk, which is we show something and then we ask, what did you understand from that? And get the feedback from it. Of those recommendations we talked about, and of course, people won't remember them, but we'll put them on the screen. Typical learning style. If you could just answer here, which of them are hot topics for you? Is it a hot topic for you to justify investment for L&D? What about agreeing the way forward when you've got this team saying, no, we should do this first, and this other team saying, no, we should do that first? How do you get alignment and agreement? What about investing enough to keep your content fresh so you're putting new content on every month? Are those challenges for you? And likewise, as Matt said, building long-term capability so that this isn't something you put in and forget. It's something that keeps growing and developing as your organization grows and develops. So, okay, we'll just give it 3, 2, 1 seconds, and then I'll end the polling and share the answers. Matt, let me have your thoughts on the answers, if you would, please.
yeah, and maybe if you call out the key trends, Alan, and I'll comment just, on what you're seeing on your
Absolutely.
side.
So we're seeing a number of people struggling with the business case for investment, but actually over half are struggling with developing a digital learning roadmap within their organization.
Yeah, and again, I've built many roadmaps. They're a collaboration tool for me. They are a living document, and that doesn't suggest that it takes 3 months to actually build one. I think you build one quickly, and then you correct it, and you refine it, and you discuss it. And I think in around an investment, conversation that's crucial. And
Uh,
also for senior leaders, I think visualizing the road ahead. It tends to be the language they work in. They work at much more crucial, higher level headline level of detail, but then they ask key questions, and that
Great. And
hopefully you can answer.
And then just in the interest of time, I'll pick out one more for your comment, which is
Yeah.
that over 60% have said that they don't invest enough in content and digital design, which chimes entirely with the research study.
Yeah, and again, I share the empathy. You've probably got a good stock of content which in some way has worked before or trucks along, and then you've got that dilemma of maybe it's kind of PowerPoint or PDF based. Not suggest that there's anything, critically wrong with that. It may be saying the right things, it might be driving the right learning. But of course, our appetite is changing to see this in a digital place now, and actually to have key features like gamification and badges, and an easier kind of user experience. So, and then the key point I think both Alan and I have mentioned is how much can you generate and how quickly. So if that's 60% of you, I would say, yeah, certainly empathy there. And we could certainly talk about how we can help you kind of accelerate and digitize what you do, because I think we view that as crucial. Great. What we'll do now is we'll have a quick summary section on our focus on AI. As you see on screen, AI enters the conversation in the UK member education space. And then Alan will share a light demo of our own LMS. So probably firstly, just about the approach we took in this specific section. So I think you'll see it come up in a moment. We posed specific questions, a set of 10 to our audience. And I don't suggest you to read those today, but they are in the report. But we wanted kind of 10 areas of inquiry specifically around AI. And what was great is we got a ton of responses in different formats. So when you see the study, you'll see there's narrative in there about what people were saying. There are stats, which you could share yourselves inside your organizations, quotes, which I love, qualitative kind of view of what people are experiencing. And we've given you a Get Savvy key takeaway, which is almost a mini recommendation in each area. So there are 10 of those. And what we wanted to do today is very simply summarize the top three takeaways. And you'll see those now. And, those are actually an amalgamation of the 10 findings. So the first one there to say is, there is cautious optimism about the use and adoption of AI across member organizations, particularly around digital education. I think, in summary, people's barriers or concerns are threefold. And there's an ethical concern there about using AI safely and protecting staff roles. There's a reputational risk. It's new. What happens if we get something wrong and we get negative feedback? And then there is this natural risk or concern around capability. Do we have the people with the right skills to drive us forward in this way safely? And the second one there we have talked about, but it came from the AI section. I won't labor it, but this difference between awareness and action, moving from one place to the next. And I think that is with experimentation, starting small and then building from there, experimenting perhaps some organization doing with their own GPT versus chat GPT or others. And as I say, policy is crucial. I think most organizations must be saying, if they've not got one right now, we need to write and publish an AI policy and get some governance controls wrapped around what people are doing. And then the third one there, and you've heard it sort of in the broader study, but in terms of AI, people are reaching out for support and they're being quite specific. There's a need for conversation, collaboration, and clarity about sector-wide guidance on how we're using AI. And people are looking for trusted and, let's say, economical partnerships around adopting AI and getting support in doing that. I've mentioned it. People are looking for safe ways to start delivering AI tools and proofs of concepts. And of course, people are looking for training and upskilling support, as they naturally would do, and for their own benefit and for the benefit of the organization. So that's the three key takeaways. There are more and plenty of brilliant detail in the study. So I think what we'll do now, though, is we will move on just to give you a taster of some of what you'll see in terms of our LMS, our digital education, and our AI features. So
Uh,
back over to you, Alan.
Thank you very much, Matt. So this is really about just what we as an organization did and how we used AI and so on. So um, don't worry so much about the course content. It's more about how it's presented and the tools. Bear in mind, we did this a couple of years ago, just as AI was emerging. We were very much early adopters. There's so much more there's a lot of things that we did by hand, if you like, that we now do using AI-based tools for our clients. So you can actually do more with a lower budget than ever before. So let me just go through. This course is about managing technology projects in your own organization. So if I just jump into that, and then I'll log in into the screen here, and then sign in. And then I get to my own personal dashboard. And then in this course, the modules take you through the journey of a project in your own organization. Everything is half an hour, roughly. Business case, how to put together your planning and resourcing, how to run a vendor selection. So let me jump into the rest of the modules, which takes you through things like how to do implementation, testing, go live, etc. And then the final module is the formal assessment, which gives you a tour of AI features and so on when you're assessing people. So let's jump into one of the modules, which is the supplier selection module here. And then the first thing you get is the project pathway. This is the overall journey of your project. And we're going to jump into okay, we've done a business case. We're now ready to go to the market. Let's run a supplier selection process. So off we go into that. We always start with your learning outcomes. We took the tone of using AI-driven avatars. All of our research shows that people don't like lots of text on screen. They don't like just back and forth in PowerPointy style courses. They like a human being to guide them. Now that used to cost £10,000 an hour for studio time and all of those things. Now it's vastly cheaper. So we took the path of putting those in. So our courses, we tend to go scenario driven. So you're in the role of a project manager, like Mission Impossible, your role if you choose to accept it. And then we'll have other people that tell you what they want out of you as a project manager, and you have to kind of satisfy them and argue with them through the course. We use a lot of scenario-based things. So a scenario like you're running the vendor selection and your team can't agree which one they like. How do you work that through? People are arguing about the benefits, or people are saying, I can't attend all of these meetings, but I still prefer the other vendor that,
What is the best way to make sure the
so we have
process to
talking
select a
through. I
supplier
won't
is
listen
fair
to
and
all of
legal?
this.
There
But
are
just to
some key
guide
things
through.
we can do to make sure everyone can see the process is fair and auditable. We have to make sure the rules and criteria of the selection process are made clear to all the suppliers in the RFP and also to our internal selection team. All potential suppliers are treated equally.
I'll just speed through that. But we have talking teachers, talking tutors all of the way through. That's more and more, sophisticated, more accessible, and cheaper to do than ever. So, including those elements in your courses, we find to be really important in terms of engagement, people finding it interesting and wanting to come back for more. Then, of course, a lot of it is about the assets that people get after the course. So we're very big on certificates, badges, achievements, things that you can put on your CV. But in this case, we have a load of documents you can use on your own actual project. So here's a supplier scorecard you can download. It's a Word document. Here is a comparison matrix. That's an Excel document. It's beautifully designed. You use it yourself in your own project. So then at every stage, we find that our research shows you must pause and check your understanding, but it must be interactive. It must have a way of keeping people awake and making sure they're really absorbing the content. So we have lots of different formats for that. This one is a yes/no format. I'll submit on that. Whoops, got that wrong. Don't know my own course, but the feedback is personalized and relevant to you based on what you've done and what modules you've done, what you should do next to fix that lack of knowledge. This one, drag and drop. I'll drag and drop those into there. And then again, I get my feedback. Got that wrong again. Duh. So essentially, it tells me where I've gone wrong again, what I need to do next about it. And then I get my results and I can go round again, or I can just carry on through. And then when I get from there, I go to the final assessment that gives you our qualification. This particular qualification is accredited, and you then get an actual project management qualification after your 7 hours of learning. We go through 50 questions for them in lots and lots of different formats for those questions. We're testing that they really have understood the content. We're testing that they really do understand it. And at the end of it, if you get a high enough result, you can choose to know what I'll do is I'll download the certificate. And you can see it's properly accredited by these organizations, Institute of Leadership, International Association for Project Management. We give a digital certificate at the end of it. So we tend to build this into the learning platforms as well. Now, what this has helped with us is we've had literally thousands of people go through this course now. And the most common feedback we get is, oh, I must have the rest of my organization go through this. I must have the rest of the team go through it, because they feel it is genuinely accessible. It's interesting, it's not dry. And by the way, an important note, I think, for people is that we developed all of this on the Moodle platform. So it's open source. There's no limit to what you can do in the Moodle platform compared to what you can do in a licensed product. It just means that we're able to use the money on content instead of spending it all on product licenses. So there's just a quick whistle-stop tour. And then Matt, I'll just go back to the Q&A if you don't mind. After that, we've had 4 questions coming in on the Q&A. So let me just go through those, and then we've had some pre-webinar questions come in. So the first question is a slightly skeptical question saying, who funded this study? And I could make a joke by it was funded by a supplier in the marketplace hoping to manipulate the marketplace, but I won't make that joke. It's a completely independent study funded entirely by Get Savvy, and it's to provide insight into the marketplace for membership organizations thinking about what their next steps are. So that's a categorical answer. That is an independent study. What we've got is a question about learning content is the next one. How do membership bodies manage a mix of preferences for your audience? Some wanting in-person, and then some wanting digital, and then hybrid is between those two. I've got some thoughts on that. Matt, do you want to give me your thoughts first of all?
Yeah, I think the data and the insights are really important. And of course, we could take data from everywhere. I hope you're receiving feedback from people in various different ways. I think spending some time to boil that down just to get clear trends, in your own research study, as well as, leaning on certain things you've found out today. And so that's one thing. When you've got that clarity, I mean, it is my personal professional opinion. I think you view your in-person learning as high value, the white glove service. At times that might be for example, for a chartered institute, certain key in-person engagements, because chartered status is quite a critical qualification or status to gain. And then I think you put your volume into digital learning. And as I said, not to be ignored, when you are in person, you also want to be thinking about digital tools that you can blend in that setting. So I don't want to give ratios, but I do think if you say, well, our high value and potentially higher cost is in person, where do we put that in the calendar and for whom? And I think view your broad base as digital online learning in various different ways.
Great, thank you. And what I'll add to that is you can never go wrong having your content digitized in an interesting way. It then becomes easier to provide to people at any time they want. It becomes easier to provide on any device, and our research shows that's what members really, really value: accessible, on-demand, digitized training. And then, of course, as Matt says, if you can arrange the timings and people are there at the same time, there's nothing like the live experience of a webinar and Q&A for yourselves. But offering both is the optimum. The one thing I will say as well is that too many organizations put their webinar recordings as the only monthly change on their digital learning platform, and it's not enough, unfortunately. Those organizations know it's not enough, but they've struggled to bring the change about. So you can never go wrong adding to your digital self-paced learning, and it's cheaper than ever to do that. We got a couple of practical questions here. Which LMS do we use when showing our project manager course? We use Moodle, as I've mentioned before. There were a couple of reasons for that. One is that we didn't want to have any restriction on the number of people going through thinking, oh, I have to pay a license fee for every learner going through. It's one of the main problems that membership bodies have is that as the course take-up goes up, they then have to pay more for the system, and often in unanticipated ways, which causes problems. So we went with the Moodle platform, and because we're doing it ourselves, we then didn't have that problem of even some people who provide Moodle will charge you more per learner, which is quite sketchy behavior in our view. That's why we went there. The next question was, did we what do we use for our authoring of the course content? And the guess in the question here was articulate storyline, and that's 100% good guess. We use articulate for sometimes called articulate, but sometimes called articulate, verb or noun. Basically, we went with articulate as the authoring tool, which we found to be the best for things like. And we use a tool called Synthesia, which is where we use the AI-driven avatars. Both of those tools continue to develop their AI-based tools and are more accessible for membership organizations as they take them on without being a developer themselves. Matt, do you mind if I ask you this question here, which is, I believe one of the barriers to using AI is knowing which AI tool to use and how that tool can be integrated into our system. And then there's a bit of exposition which says we're currently going through a CRM upgrade with our Dynamics system, which comes with some AI tools. There's a Copilot with Dynamics now. But can we recommend AI tools we could utilize in the future for the L&D provision? So let's tackle the first bit, is knowing which tools to use and where to use them. Do you want to comment on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, and I think I'll start with not sponsored by Microsoft, but we do know a lot of organizations use Microsoft 365 and Office packages. And what I find, again, personally, professionally, is Copilot is built into that. One of the key things about that is it's inside your tenancy. So whereas I have also used, OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Gemini, for things like searches or editing, there is an element of scrutiny about certainly adding any of your corporate or organizational information there, because it's constantly learning and it will be learning and replicating using your data as well. So using Copilot for me is inside your tenancy somewhat safer, and also using the data inside your environment as well. So if you're looking for a file, and which we all do all the time, that can be rapid as one use case. And I think in the wider Microsoft world, they are starting to add these little features into the rest of Office packages. Like one I love is the team summary. So if you've got it switched on, you can record and transcript your meetings, and it will offer you this brilliant summary, which is usually quite accurate and becoming more so. And I think the point underneath that is what's available to you right now, and what is being prompted, and where are the key needs. Because some of this is strategic and what everyone needs, or what our infrastructure needs to include, and some of it is just scenarios and how do I make my life a bit better at work. And I think beyond that, in terms of learning, I think it's a conversation about what you're using and how. Maybe what I'll do is highlight some of the advantages of AI in learning. Of course, this idea of curating your content and editing it. I will always say content needs a human touch, but there might be ways to accelerate what you do in terms of actually creating content and then validating it yourself based on what needs to occur there. And things like predictive learner paths, offering people things that they might want to do next based on what they've done before. That's really good. And the final one around analytics, just speeding up and actually mining data in a new way in terms of what are the key themes of feedback which our members are giving us based on their learning experience. So that's more about the features. But you talk to any good supplier and say, what have you got on offer in this space? And they will tell you.
Very good. Thank you. And just to add a couple of comments to that. So we've already mentioned specific tools like Articulate we use for authoring, which has really strong and growing AI features. And then Synthesia, which allows you to do those AI-driven avatars and create videos from them. You give it a script and you tell it what accent you like. And there's a little bit of curating how it pronounces certain words, but that's vastly cheaper than anything that ever existed before. And there are competitors for that as well, lots of them. Also, though, it's worth noting that Moodle itself as a platform is a really early adopter of AI, and there are lots of AI-driven tools into Moodle, despite it being open source and no license fee and so on. So most of the projects we're doing now have a strong AI element, and what we describe it as is not a digital revolution with AI; it's a capacity revolution with AI. So you're able to create vastly more content than ever before at a vastly cheaper price. So even just taking examples, every step of the course journey, the course creation journey, let's say taking a white paper or a PDF or a PowerPoint or some thought bubble from one of your members, you can give that to ChatGPT for free and say, create me a storyboard for a course based on this PDF. And it'll, of course, it'll do it in seconds. And then instead of you spending, a week creating this storyboard or even a day, you then spend a fraction of the time you would have done before curating it, checking it, improving it, making sure that it is really, really what you want. And then likewise, give me a series of exam questions or checking your understanding questions for this block of content here in this Word document, and it'll generate those things for you. And then the human element is checking, proving, making sure you like it, and so on. And so a lot of the projects we have are making sure that people are in control of those tools. A lot of it isn't just about using the free version online, because you want to have guardrails. You want it to understand your offering. You want it to understand, don't get your content from the Daily Mail or something that is going to be full of horrible stuff. So there are guardrails that you put around it where you can still get the benefits of that. Okay, just in the interest of time, I've got a pre-webinar question as well, and we've just had another Q&A question drop in. One of the so let me do this the new question that's just dropped in. Are we able to provide an example of accessible AI-derived training, the material that we have developed, i.e. a web link? Well, the course I just went through had AI developed training as it was, at the time we developed the course. And we can provide other examples where people are taking AI tools. But bear in mind just what I've said. A lot of it is how people are going through the entire journey using AI, everything from the storyboarding, everything from creating the exam questions, and then, of course, doing things like creating the animations and the infographics and the designs and so on. So it doesn't have a kind of this was created by AI on it. It's just more sophisticated content than they were able to do before at a cheaper price, and the volume is going up of that content. Let me just say we've got a pre-webinar question in, which is what are the main barriers to getting an LMS project off the ground that membership organizations experience? And the answer to that we find very often is transparency around pricing. This is really specific area where it's very hard to work out what your LMS project is going to cost, because the majority of LMS providers charge based on how many of your learners consume your content, which is itself a negative, because you don't want to have restrictions on how many learners consume your content or any downside to increasing your take up. And the problem there is twofold. One, it's very hard to know how your learner numbers are going to increase as your content improves and as your marketing improves. And then the other is a lack of transparency from LMS providers. So a couple of concrete areas of advice we would always provide on that is when it comes to trying to work out what your costs might be for your project and then to justify them. First of all, always take a multi-year approach to your costs. So always look at costs as they would be over 3 years, and then work out what it would be for the ongoing license costs that they would charge you, and demand suppliers give you modeling costs based on this number of thousands and that number of thousands. The second thing we always encourage as part of the projects is take the highest possible estimate of how many learners you might be having. So fairly common models are to take something like at least a quarter of your membership will visit your LMS at some point during the year. Add to that and then give that to potential suppliers and say, give me a costing model over 3 years based on those numbers. And then make sure you're not surprised by that later, because it's one of the most common pitfalls that we find. Okay, I think we're out of time on the Q&A questions. Thanks so very much for everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
On those. So great. Let's just go through. A final remark from me is just a reminder of the kind of projects that we do most commonly at Get Savvy. Recently, we were asked to put up an actual replacement LMS for somebody just on that topic of pricing, because the cost of their previous LMS system had gone through the roof as their take-up had increased, and the finance director was breathing down their neck, saying, "We didn't expect the prices per year to triple. We have to stop the project." So what we did is we put up a replacement LMS and migrated the content, etc., so that with a zero license fee model moving on year and year, and then content digitalization. When you see that the cost of content creation has gone right down, then you should be increasing the volume of content, because that's what members value the most. And then working out what your next steps forward are and how to get started on your project and how much it would cost is a big thing. And then, let me just hand over back to you, Matt, if I may.
Yes, so we are on time and we're at the end of the webinar. Thank you for all your questions. So just a couple of reminders. You'll get the screen recording, so if you've missed anything live, you'll be able to see it later. We'll send you a copy of the research study, of course. You've seen our course. Please do aim to avail of that 50% discount for managing technology change projects for business people. You've seen it. You've seen how valuable it is and what it contains. In terms of the services we provide, we do have an offer of a no obligation conversation. If you're struggling with something and you want some advice, we potentially look to start a project and we may be able to help. We could certainly discuss that, no strings attached. And please go to our website for further of these webinars this year. Particularly, you'll see in September, we've got 2 brilliant ones coming up. How you can build your own LMS from scratch using AI. So probably more on what you've seen from our demo today. And a crucial question, is your LMS costing you too much money? So thank you. It's been really brilliant to share our findings with you today, and please do keep in touch.
Right. Thanks, everybody. See you on the next one.